You see, most people spend their lives trying to convince others of their worth, explaining, proving, negotiating for attention that should have been freely given. But the moment you start fighting to be valued, you've already lost a part of yourself. The real shift happens when you realize that recognition doesn't come from others seeing you. It comes from you seeing yourself. That's where the power begins, not in making someone feel your presence, but in understanding that your presence was never dependent on their acknowledgement in the first place. When you know your worth, you no longer chase validation, you attract respect. And that difference changes everything, because people can sense when your energy is self-sustained. They can feel when you're no longer emotionally dependent on their opinion. It unsettles them. The person who once took your kindness for granted starts to notice the silence. The one who assumed you'd always be there begins to question what happened. What happened is simple: you woke up, you remembered who you are, you stopped being a mirror for their ego and started becoming a reflection of your own strength. Understanding your worth doesn't mean arrogance. It doesn't mean declaring I'm better. It means quietly knowing I'm enough. It means realizing that your time, your attention, your love, these are not things to be begged for. They are privileges to be earned. When someone disrespects that, when they treat your presence like a convenience, it's not your job to convince them otherwise. It's your responsibility to step back. Because when you continue to stay where you're not valued, you're not proving love, you're proving fear. Fear of being alone, fear of starting over, fear that maybe you're not enough without them. But the truth is, you were enough before they came, and you'll be enough long after they go. There's something magnetic about a person who values themselves. They walk differently, they speak differently, they carry an energy that says, I don't chase, I attract. And when you reach that space, people begin to feel the shift. The one who once ignored you starts to sense your absence in ways they can't explain. Not because you're gone, but because your energy has withdrawn. You're no longer available in the way you used to be, no longer emotionally accessible on demand. And that's when the pain of losing you begins. Because the most powerful kind of loss isn't when someone leaves, it's when they realize you've outgrown needing them. Understanding your worth also means being comfortable with distance. You don't need to prove your strength through confrontation. Sometimes the most powerful statement is quiet withdrawal. When you stop explaining your value, people are forced to experience it. When you stop fighting to be understood, your absence becomes the teacher. You begin to see that true empowerment is not about making someone pay attention. It's about realizing you don't need their attention to feel complete. The paradox is that when you stop trying to make someone value you, they often start to. Because people feel the loss of energy before they feel the loss of presence. They start to miss the version of themselves that existed when they had access to your warmth, your understanding, your consistency. But by then, something inside you has changed. You no longer want to be where you're merely tolerated. You've learned to reserve your energy for where it's reciprocated. So if you truly want him to feel the pain of losing you, don't try to hurt him. Just remember your worth, and live it so fully that he realizes he never deserved to have it. Because nothing stings deeper than recognizing the value of something only after it's gone, especially when that something finally learned how to never settle for less again. And that's the quiet, unstoppable power of knowing your worth. You don't need to make anyone feel the loss. Your evolution does it for you. Detachment. Most people misunderstand this word. They think it means not caring, becoming distant, emotionless, or indifferent. But real detachment is none of that. Real detachment is clarity. It's the moment when you stop confusing love with dependency, when you stop holding on to something that's already slipping away, not because you've stopped feeling, but because you've finally started understanding. You begin to see that attachment to the wrong energy is what creates your suffering. You realize that peace doesn't come from holding on tighter, it comes from letting go with grace. We live in a world where people equate control with connection. They think if they can hold someone close enough, text them enough, argue enough, explain enough, they can keep the relationship alive. But the truth is, you cannot force someone to stay connected to you through effort. What's meant to stay, stays through alignment, not attachment. When you detach, you stop trying to bend yourself into the shape of someone else's comfort. You stop trying to earn what should be freely given. Detachment is freedom, not from love but from needing love to define you. When you practice detachment, you start to regain emotional control. You're no longer living on the roller coaster of someone else's moods or decisions. You no longer lose yourself every time they pull away. It's like reclaiming the steering wheel of your own life. You start to see that their approval or attention is not your oxygen. It's just noise. And once you silence that noise, your own inner voice becomes louder, calmer, wiser, and far more powerful. You stop reacting and start observing. You stop chasing and start choosing. And that is where the transformation begins. Think about it. When you detach from someone who's taking you for granted, you don't just walk away physically. You take back your emotional power. You stop giving them the ability to affect your peace. The energy that was once spent checking your phone, replaying conversations, or wondering what you did wrong is now redirected toward your own growth. And that's when things start shifting, because detachment changes the energy dynamic. Suddenly, they no longer feel your constant presence, your attention, your emotional investment. And the absence of that energy becomes the mirror in which they start to see their own actions more clearly. The truth is, when you detach, you teach without words. You show them what your silence means. You show them that love without respect isn't love, that presence without peace isn't connection, and that no matter how deeply you cared, you will never sacrifice your inner stability for someone who doesn't value it. It's not revenge, it's evolution. It's not punishment, it's maturity. You're simply saying, I've learned to love you without losing myself. And make no mistake, they will feel it, because nothing shakes a person more than realizing the one they thought would always be available no longer is. Your calmness becomes their discomfort. Your peace becomes their confusion. Your detachment becomes the silence in which their own conscience starts to echo. That's when the pain of losing you begins to sink in, not because you wanted to hurt them, but because you finally chose yourself. So, detach not to escape, but to elevate. Detach not to prove something, but to protect your peace. The power is not in making someone feel abandoned, it's in reminding yourself that you were never dependent in the first place. Love deeply, but hold lightly. Care sincerely, but stand firmly. Because the moment you can love without clinging, give without expecting, and walk away without bitterness, you become untouchable. ***, remember, this detachment doesn't end love, it ends your suffering. And when your peace becomes more valuable than their presence, that's when they truly begin to feel the pain of losing you. Silence is one of the most underestimated powers in human relationships. We're conditioned to respond, to explain, to defend, to make ourselves understood, but very few people realize that silence, when used with awareness, speaks far louder than words ever can. Silence unsettles. It exposes, it creates a space where the other person is left alone with their conscience, forced to hear the echo of their own behavior, and that echo, over time, becomes louder than any argument you could ever make. When someone hurts you, disrespects you, or takes you for granted, your first instinct is often to react, to shout, to demand answers, to make them see what they've done. But here's the truth. When you react, you hand them control. You're still playing their game on their terms. Silence, on the other hand, removes you from the board entirely. It says, you no longer have access to my emotions. It shifts the balance from chaos to clarity. Suddenly, they are left wondering, why isn't she responding? Why isn't she explaining? Why does she seem so calm? And that calmness becomes their confusion. People who are used to power through manipulation or emotional control don't know how to deal with silence. They thrive on reaction because reaction means connection. Even anger is still a form of attention, but when you fall silent, you starve their ego of what it craves most, relevance. You stop feeding the drama, and they start feeding on the discomfort of being ignored. That's when they begin to feel the absence, not just of your voice, but of your emotional presence, your warmth, your validation. Silence becomes the invisible wall between who they were to you and who they've now forced you to become. But silence isn't just about punishing someone, it's about protecting your peace. When you choose silence, you're saying, I refuse to lower my frequency to match your chaos. It's not an act of pride, it's an act of wisdom. You understand that arguments rarely heal anything. Words spoken in pain usually breed more pain. So instead of explaining your worth, you demonstrate it through composure. You allow time and silence to reveal what noise could never make clear. And the beauty of silence is that it magnifies truth. It shows you who's willing to reach out, who's capable of reflection, who truly values your presence. Some people will panic when you go quiet, not because they miss you, but because they've lost control. Others will reflect, realize, and return with humility, and a few will stay distant, confirming that your silence revealed what your words couldn't, that you were never truly heard in the first place. Either way, silence always brings you closer to truth. Think about this. When someone stops arguing, stops explaining, stops chasing, it doesn't mean they don't care. It means they've grown beyond the need to convince. They've realized that peace is more valuable than being understood. And once you reach that point, you stop needing closure from anyone. You become your own closure. You stop performing emotional labor for people who don't reciprocate it. You learn that silence isn't weakness, it's mastery. It's the ability to stand firm without shouting, to walk away without slamming the door, to end a chapter without bitterness. And over time, your silence becomes unforgettable. Because people remember how you made them feel, and they will feel the difference between your noise and your absence. When you stop explaining, your value starts speaking for itself. When you stop reacting, your growth becomes the loudest message. So the next time someone expects a reaction, give them silence instead. Let your calmness be your statement. Let your absence be your answer. Let your peace be your revenge. Asterisk, because silence doesn't mean you have nothing to say, it means you no longer see the need to say it. And in that quiet, they'll finally begin to hear everything they refused to listen to before. Asterisk, there's a quiet kind of power in learning to withdraw your energy, not your emotion, not your kindness, but your energy. Because energy is the most expensive currency you own. Wherever you invest it, you give life. And when you keep pouring that energy into someone who doesn't value it, you don't just drain yourself, you deplete your spirit. The problem isn't that you cared too much, it's that you kept giving to someone who kept taking without realizing the cost. Sooner or later, you reach a point of clarity that your peace is too expensive to spend on the wrong person. You don't have to become bitter to pull back. You don't have to shout, announce, or punish. You simply redirect your focus. You stop showing up where you're not appreciated, and you stop offering your energy to spaces that don't nourish it. That shift is subtle but transformative, because when you withdraw your energy, you're not abandoning anyone, you're reclaiming yourself. You're no longer trying to keep a connection alive that you didn't kill. You're simply stepping away from the imbalance, from the emotional debt that love sometimes creates when it's not mutual. Most people think love is about giving endlessly. They think strength means staying no matter what. But that's not love. That's self-neglect disguised as loyalty. Real love is balanced, it breathes. It flows in both directions. The moment you realize you're the only one giving, you're not in love anymore, you're in survival mode. And survival mode isn't sustainable. When you withdraw your energy, you stop being a participant in your own depletion. You give the other person the space to feel the weight of your absence, not as revenge, but as reality. They begin to understand that your presence was never guaranteed, that your giving was a privilege, not a right. Energy is invisible, but its impact is undeniable. You can feel when someone is pulling away, when their interest fades, when their engagement drops, when their warmth turns cold. That same sensitivity exists on the other side, too. When you stop feeding someone your time, your thoughts, your availability, they feel it. They may not say it, but they sense the void. Because the human mind always reacts to loss, especially the loss of something that once felt certain. When you pull your energy back, it's like taking the sun out of a room that someone forgot to appreciate until it was dark. But here's the important part. Withdrawing your energy doesn't mean withdrawing your humanity. You can still wish them well, still feel gratitude for what was, but you do it from a distance that protects your peace. You no longer chase closure, no longer beg to be seen. You simply stop overextending where it's not reciprocated. And that's when your self-worth starts to rebuild. Because when your energy isn't wasted on trying to fix what's broken, it becomes available for creating something better: peace, purpose, progress. When they finally realize your silence, your absence, your stillness, it hits differently. Because they remember how consistent you once were, how much effort you gave, how deeply you cared. That memory becomes the reminder of what they lost, not because you punished them, but because you stopped participating in your own pain. The void they feel isn't your doing, it's the natural consequence of taking your energy for granted. So if you truly want someone to feel the pain of losing you, stop trying to make them feel it. Just redirect your focus, pull your energy inward, and use it to grow. Because nothing is more powerful than a person who learns to love without losing themselves. Remember this: when you stop giving your energy to those who drain it, you don't create emptiness, you create space. And in that space, you rediscover your strength, the kind they'll wish they'd never lost. Growth has a strange way of making people realize what they've lost. When you evolve beyond the version of yourself they once knew, it forces them to confront a truth they never considered: that you were never standing still. While they were busy taking you for granted, assuming you would always be the same, you were quietly transforming. You were healing, learning, expanding. And one day, they wake up and realize the person they left behind no longer exists. That's when the pain of losing you truly begins, not because you disappeared, but because you've become someone their old patterns can no longer reach. There's something profoundly unsettling about witnessing someone's evolution after you've mistreated or underestimated them. It's like watching a flower bloom in the garden you once neglected. You can't take credit for its beauty anymore, and you can't return to it without confronting the memory of your own carelessness. That's what growth does. It turns the tables without vengeance. It allows your transformation to become the silent mirror reflecting their mistakes. You don't have to say a word. Your success, your peace, your confidence, they all speak for you. When you grow, you're not trying to make anyone regret losing you. You're simply choosing to live beyond the pain they caused. Growth is the purest form of revenge because it shifts your identity from victim to victor. It takes the energy that was once spent on suffering and redirects it towards self-improvement. You stop waiting for apologies. You stop seeking explanations. You stop trying to go back to a version of yourself that existed only in their comfort zone. You begin to realize that the best way to make someone feel your absence is to evolve into someone they can no longer recognize, not out of pride, but out of purpose. Psychologically, when someone sees you thriving after they've hurt or dismissed you, it disrupts their internal narrative. They expect you to crumble, to beg, to break down. They build a mental image of your dependence, and when your reality no longer matches that image, it creates discomfort. Suddenly, they're faced with the fact that they misjudged you, and that realization burns quietly. It's not the dramatic pain of loss. It's the slow ache of awareness that they once had access to something rare, and now they never will again. But your growth shouldn't be about proving them wrong. It should be about proving yourself right, that you were always capable, worthy, and strong. The pain they feel is not your responsibility. It's the natural consequence of your evolution. You see, people often fall in love with your potential but walk away when you start becoming it, and that's fine. Their exit clears space for the version of you that no longer needs validation. Growth isn't always glamorous. Sometimes it's lonely, sometimes it's painful. But it's the only path that guarantees that the next chapter of your life won't be defined by the last person who underestimated you. And here's the beauty: once you evolve, you start attracting different energies. People who once dismissed you will begin to notice the light in you, but they won't be able to touch it anymore. The same qualities they overlooked now become the ones they can't forget. But you'll be too busy building, too focused on peace, too fulfilled within yourself to care. You've moved from seeking love to embodying self-worth. So if you want him to feel the pain of losing you, don't try to make him jealous. Don't try to make him see your worth just grow beyond his reach. Because nothing hurts more than watching someone become everything you didn't appreciate when you had the chance. Remember, the best way to make him feel the pain of losing you is to become the version of yourself that no longer even remembers the version of him who caused it. Time and distance, two forces that reveal what words often hide. You see, people rarely understand the value of your presence while they have it. It's only in your absence that they start to feel the gravity of what they once took for granted. Distance has a way of stripping away illusion. Time has a way of magnifying truth, and together they do the quiet, unrelenting work that no amount of confrontation ever could. You don't have to teach someone a lesson when time and distance are already doing it for you. When you step away from someone who's grown comfortable with your presence, something subtle but powerful begins to happen. At first, they might not notice. They might even feel relief, mistaking your silence for surrender. But slowly, reality begins to set in. The texts that once came instantly now go unanswered. The warmth they expected on demand is no longer available, and what they used to dismiss as ordinary starts to feel like a rare privilege they lost. That's the irony of human behavior. We recognize gold only after mistaking it for dust. Time, when used wisely, becomes your greatest ally. It allows emotions to settle, perspective to grow, and truth to reveal itself. The beauty is that you don't need to force understanding. Time does it naturally. It gives space for reflection, both yours and theirs, because distance doesn't just teach them, it heals you. It clears your mind from the noise of confusion and attachment. It allows you to look back without craving, to remember without pain. And as you evolve through that space, you begin to see that letting go wasn't loss, it was liberation. There's a psychology behind why distance creates impact. The human brain is wired to crave what's missing. Familiarity dulls appreciation, but absence sharpens it. When you're always available, people stop valuing the privilege of your presence. When you step back, you interrupt that pattern. Suddenly, the comfort of your consistency is gone. The mind starts to replay memories, to recall your laughter, your patience, your energy. They start to see what they never stopped to look at before. That's the quiet pain of losing someone who never made a scene while leaving. It's realizing too late that they're truly gone. But this isn't about manipulation or revenge. It's about trusting that you don't need to chase closure. You don't need to explain your worth to someone who couldn't see it. Time will make it visible. Distance will make it undeniable. When you remove yourself from a situation that no longer honors your peace, you hand life the responsibility of teaching the lesson for you. And life is an excellent teacher, patient, consistent, and fair. You'll notice something remarkable during this process. As time passes and distance grows, you'll begin to care less about being understood and more about being at peace. The obsession fades, the craving for validation dissolves. What remains is clarity, the kind that comes only when you've been brave enough to step away. You stop waiting for them to realize what they lost because, deep down, you already know. You start to see that the one who left empty wasn't you, it was them. They lost access to your warmth, your presence, your loyalty. You lost only a source of imbalance, and here's the truth. Nothing punishes neglect more effectively than time. It amplifies what people failed to appreciate. Distance makes them remember not what they had, but how they lost it. And by the time they realize, you've already outgrown the version of yourself that needed their recognition. So don't rush the process. Don't break the silence. Let time and distance do their work. Because what's meant to be will find its way back, and what's not will fade into the background of your peace. Asterisk asterisk, remember this: your absence has more power than your presence ever did, if it's filled with growth. Let time reveal your worth, and let distance protect it. Asterisk asterisk, you reach a point in life where you realize words are no longer enough. You've explained your intentions, your feelings, your worth maybe 100 times, but people only hear what they're ready to hear, and appreciation can't be taught through repetition. That's when you stop explaining and start asterisk living asterisk your value. Because there's a profound difference between saying, "I deserve better," and showing it through your actions. When you stop trying to convince someone of your importance, you force them to experience the reality of your absence, and that reality speaks louder than any speech ever could. You see, people get comfortable with your energy when it's always available. They get used to the consistency of your kindness, your patience, your understanding, and in that comfort, they forget it's a choice, not a guarantee. When you decide to stop proving your value, the energy dynamic changes. Suddenly, you're no longer the one chasing, explaining, or negotiating your place in their life. You've stepped back into your power. You've turned your silence into strength, and that's when they begin to feel the shift. Psychologically, humans value what they must work for. When something or someone is always accessible, the brain starts to perceive it as ordinary. But when that access is removed, when you stop answering every message, stop giving unlimited chances, stop overextending yourself, the mind begins to crave what it once ignored. That's why your absence hits harder than your arguments ever could. Because silence backed by self-respect creates scarcity, and scarcity creates awareness. They start to notice that what they once overlooked now feels unreachable. But here's the deeper truth. You don't stop explaining your value out of pride. You stop because you've finally understood that your worth doesn't depend on someone else's recognition. You begin to live in alignment with that truth. You stop pouring your energy into convincing others and start investing it into building yourself. And that shift, that inward redirection, is where your true transformation begins. Your life starts to reflect your self-respect. Your boundaries become clear. Your peace becomes your priority. And those who once underestimated you start to feel the distance between who you were and who you've become. When you live your value instead of explaining it, your growth speaks for itself. You no longer need to announce your worth. Your progress does it for you. You no longer need to chase validation. Your peace becomes proof. There's something magnetic about a person who knows their value and no longer bargains for it. They move differently. They speak differently. They radiate a quiet confidence that can't be ignored. And that confidence, that composure, that serenity, that's what makes people realize what they've lost. It's a universal law. People don't remember what you said. They remember how you made them feel. And when you stop showing up for those who took you for granted, they begin to feel the void you left behind. They remember the laughter, the patience, the stability, all the little things they assumed would always be there. And while they're replaying the past, you're building a future. That's how you win, not by making them regret, but by living in a way that makes regret inevitable. So, stop explaining yourself. Let your peace do the talking. Let your progress make the statement. When you move with quiet purpose, you no longer need to justify your decisions. The ones who truly value you will understand, and the ones who don't never mattered. Asterisk asterisk, remember this: your worth was never a story to tell. It was always a truth to live. And when you finally start living it, they'll no longer just hear your silence. They'll feel the weight of losing someone who no longer needs to be understood. Asterisk asterisk, healing, that's where the real strength lies. Not in pretending you don't care, not in building walls so high that no one can reach you, but in choosing to heal when you have every reason to harden. Most people think strength means shutting down after being hurt, but that's not power, that's paralysis. True power is the ability to feel everything deeply and still decide to rise without resentment. Because the moment you start healing, you stop reacting. You stop giving them emotional access to your pain. And when that happens, the balance shifts completely. They start to feel the loss, while you start to feel free. Healing doesn't happen overnight. It's not a straight path. It's a process of unlearning the need to fix what broke you, unlearning the urge to prove your worth to someone who couldn't see it, unlearning the belief that closure has to come from them. You realize that healing isn't about forgetting, it's about remembering differently. You no longer replay the past to reopen the wound, you revisit it to understand the lesson. Every moment of pain becomes information. Every disappointment becomes data. You start to see that what you lost externally, you gained internally: clarity, maturity, emotional strength. The irony is that when you begin to heal, they often begin to hurt. Because while you're busy rebuilding, they're starting to realize the impact of what they destroyed. Healing shifts the narrative. It takes you out of the story of pain and places you into the story of power. You stop waiting for them to make things right because you've made peace with the fact that you can. You no longer chase an apology. You become the apology to yourself through self-respect, growth, and peace. You see, people expect you to break after betrayal. They expect you to become bitter, angry, untrusting. But when you rise with grace instead, it confuses them, because healing removes their control. When you don't react with anger, they can't defend their guilt. When you don't beg for closure, they can't justify their absence. When you move forward in peace, they're left with the silence of their own actions. That's the most profound kind of pain, not the one you cause intentionally, but the one that comes from realizing they no longer have access to the version of you they once hurt. Healing is the art of transformation. It's taking pain and turning it into perspective. It's understanding that forgiveness isn't about letting them off the hook. It's about setting yourself free from the emotional chain that keeps you bound to the past. Because when you carry resentment, you're still connected to them energetically. But when you forgive, you cut the tie not because they deserve peace, but because you do. Forgiveness is not weakness. It's closure in motion, and what's powerful about healing is that it changes your energy completely. You begin to glow differently, you talk differently, you attract differently, your peace becomes visible. And that's when they start to notice, because the healed version of you carries a presence that the broken version never could. They start to see that while they were busy playing games, you were busy growing. While they were avoiding accountability, you were rewriting your story. So if you want him to feel the pain of losing you, don't harden heal. Because bitterness keeps you tied to him, but healing makes you untouchable. He can't reach you anymore, not emotionally, not mentally, not spiritually. You've transcended the space where he left you. And from that place of peace, you no longer need him to feel regret. Life will take care of that. Remember this: when you choose to heal instead of harden, you don't just rise above the pain, you become the lesson they'll never forget. Power in its truest form isn't loud, it's quiet, grounded, and deeply self-assured. It doesn't need to prove, compete, or convince. It simply is. And that's the kind of power you discover when you stop seeking validation from the one who couldn't see your worth. You begin to understand that making him feel the pain of losing you isn't about revenge, it's about evolution. The greatest form of revenge is elevation, when your growth speaks so loudly that it drowns out the noise of what was lost. You see, emotional detachment isn't about indifference, it's about clarity. It's the moment you realize that you can care deeply about someone and still choose yourself. You stop chasing closure, attention, or explanations because you no longer need them to validate your experience. You recognize that you can hold love in your heart and still walk away with your dignity intact. That's what emotional maturity looks like: the strength to stay kind without staying available, the wisdom to understand without excusing, and the courage to love without losing yourself. When you reach that level of clarity, something powerful happens. Your silence becomes your statement, your distance becomes your defense, your peace becomes your proof. You stop engaging in emotional tug-of-wars because you've realized that real power doesn't chase chaos, it creates calm. And that calmness, that serenity, is exactly what makes him feel the loss, because chaos thrives on attention, but peace thrives on absence. The moment you stop reacting, the moment you stop explaining, the moment you stop fighting to be understood, that's when he starts to feel the weight of your absence. Emotional detachment is misunderstood. It's not about shutting your emotions off, it's about mastering them. It's knowing how to feel everything, yet choose what deserves your energy. It's the art of protecting your peace while still being open to life. It's the discipline to say, I could respond, but I won't. Because not every battle deserves your voice. And this level of restraint doesn't make you weak, it makes you powerful. Because real power is in control, not in reaction. When you master that control, your aura changes. People can feel it. The one who took your kindness for granted begins to notice that something about you has shifted. You no longer seek. You no longer chase. And most importantly, you no longer need asterisk. That's the deepest pain for someone who once had emotional power over you, to realize they no longer affect your state of being. Your peace becomes the mirror that reflects their chaos back to them. Philosophically speaking, detachment doesn't mean absence of love. It means freedom from attachment. It's understanding that everything, including relationships, is transient. You stop clinging and you start flowing. And when you flow, you begin to attract rather than chase. The energy shifts. You no longer try to hold what's falling away, because you trust that what's meant for you won't need to be forced. That inner stillness radiates. It commands respect without demanding it, and here's the irony: when you truly detach, that's when they finally start to notice, because they realize that your presence was their comfort zone, your attention was their validation, your energy was their fuel. Now, without it, they're left with themselves, the silence, the emptiness, the reflection of what they took for granted. That's when they feel the pain of losing you, not because you wished it upon them, but because they created it through their own choices. So, stop trying to show him what he lost. Simply become what he'll never find again. Let your growth, your composure, your peace speak for itself. Because silence is louder than confrontation, calmness is more powerful than anger, and detachment is stronger than revenge. Remember this: when you no longer seek to prove your worth, you become untouchable, and in that unshakable peace, he will finally feel what you once did, the pain of realizing what was priceless, now gone forever. In the end, the greatest transformation doesn't come from proving a point, it comes from embodying your evolution. Making him feel the pain of losing you isn't about what you say or do to him, it's about who you become after him. The real shift happens when your life, your energy, and your peace become living proof of how deeply you've grown. Because nothing makes someone realize your worth more profoundly than witnessing the version of you that could only exist after they were gone. Life has a poetic way of balancing things. What hurts you today becomes the reason for your strength tomorrow. The heartbreak that once broke you, the silence that once suffocated you, eventually becomes the soil from which your power grows. You begin to see that losing him was never the punishment, it was the push you needed to find yourself. That pain was never meant to define you, it was meant to refine you. Every tear that fell wasn't wasted, it watered the ground of your becoming. And when you finally rise, you don't rise to prove him wrong. You rise to prove yourself right, that you were always enough, always capable, always destined for more. There's something magnetic about a person who rebuilds themselves with grace. The world begins to notice, opportunities begin to flow. Even the ones who hurt you start to see the difference, not in what you say, but in how you carry yourself. You no longer operate from a place of need or resentment. You move with quiet confidence, because you've learned that peace is louder than pain, and purpose is stronger than attachment. And that shift, that glow, is what makes him feel the loss on a level he can't articulate. Because he no longer recognizes the person you've become, not because you changed for someone else, but because you finally became who you were meant to be all along. The beauty of transformation is that it doesn't seek revenge. It inspires reflection. When he sees you thriving, mentally stable, emotionally grounded, spiritually aligned, it forces him to confront what he lost. Not because you wanted to cause regret, but because growth has a way of revealing contrast. Your peace highlights his chaos, your clarity exposes his confusion, your evolution becomes his mirror, and in that mirror, he doesn't just see what he lost, he sees who he failed to value. You don't need to announce your transformation. You don't need to post it, prove it, or parade it. True change is felt, not shown. It's in the way you speak, now calm, measured, intentional. It's in the way you choose your battles, no longer reacting to everything that once triggered you. It's in your presence, grounded, unshakable, serene. That's power, and power, when rooted in peace, is the most beautiful kind of revenge life can offer. Every ending carries within it the seed of a new beginning. What looks like loss is often redirection. What feels like rejection is often protection. When you stop asking why me and start asking what is this teaching me, your entire world shifts. Because healing isn't about erasing the past, it's about building a future so full of purpose that the past loses its grip on you. And once you reach that level of peace, you stop trying to make anyone feel the pain of losing you because you've already won. Asterisk, asterisk, remember this, the real victory isn't in making him regret losing you. It's in becoming so fulfilled, so centered, and so unshakably whole that his regret no longer matters. That's when you've truly mastered the art of letting go, and that's when your silence speaks the loudest.